I think my ex-husband broke into my home and installed a camera because he knows things he shouldn't about what's happening in my home. Posted by you/scared890. I, 24F, met my ex, 27M, 7 years ago, and we dated for about a year before I ended up pregnant. He is a Jehovah's Witness, and I was raised in the faith but was never baptized, thankfully. When I became pregnant, I was told that I had to marry him if I wanted to be in good standing at the Kingdom Hall Church. I agreed and decided not to listen to my parents when they begged me to take my time and make that decision later. Of course, this meant staying and living with my parents, and as a brainwashed 18-year-old, I thought he was the best thing that had ever happened to me and that he couldn't do me wrong because he was a Jehovah's Witness, and they can't do any wrong. Boy, was I wrong. While I was pregnant, he would emotionally and physically abuse me to the point where my son was born prematurely, and I fell into postpartum depression. When my son was 8 months old, I decided I had enough and needed to put my feelings and the love I had for this man aside to make the right decision for my son. I left him. I left the religion. I don't know how I did it, but to this day, I thank my son for giving me the strength and love to get past it. Fast forward about 5 years, I am doing great. I have an amazing career, a great car, and I live on my own with my son. We have everything we need. I recently began my first relationship, and he's amazing. My ex and I actually have a pretty cordial co-parenting relationship. He seems to have matured a lot and is now in a relationship. I get along great with his girlfriend, and my son likes her. He recently decided to move 2 doors down from my place. I didn't really mind this, as we don't fight or hate each other. I actually saw it as a good thing since he would be closer to our son and could be more involved in school. Last week, I walked into my apartment and discovered that someone had broken in. However, they didn't take anything at all. A few things were moved around. It seemed like they were looking for something and gave up. The first person that popped into my head was my son's father. I have been living here for years and never had any issues. I actually live in front of the police station, so unless someone entered through the back, they would have been seen. I filed a police report and left it at that. Now, this is where it gets weird, and my suspicions seem to be proving themselves right. 3 days ago, I dropped off my son at his house, and he mentioned that I shouldn't allow our son to have certain toys because they are violent action figures, Power Rangers. There is no way he would know this. Since he is a JW, I try not to disrespect his beliefs, so I make sure that my son does not bring those toys to his house. When I asked him how he knew about it, he turned pale. He didn't know what to say and finally claimed that our son had mentioned it. Okay, so maybe my son could have told him. But maybe he didn't. To add to my suspicion, 2 days ago, I dropped my son off in the morning, and my ex slipped up by telling me that I need to shower my son every day because I didn't the night before. There is no way my son could have told him. He didn't speak to him, and it was literally the morning after. Also, I do shower my son every day, but he had swim class, and we got home late, so I figured he was okay to skip. I know it sounds lazy, but I'm sure we've all had those days. Am I being paranoid? I hate feeling like I don't have privacy in my own home. Should I ask him? Is there a way I can check myself? I've tried looking, but I haven't found anything that shows me there could be a camera. Op added additional info in the comments. I did not know he was moving in 2 doors down. He told me when he signed the lease, and at that point, I tried to look at the bright side of things. I now see that there is no bright side to this situation. I hate the feeling of walking out my door and knowing he can see what time I am home and what time I leave just by checking if my car is in the driveway. I agree that the religion he is teaching my son is not good in any way, but there's not much the law will do besides granting me full rights to his medical decisions, which I have. When he is with his dad, he goes to his church, but when he is with me, he knows we don't do any of that. Once my son reaches a certain age, he will be able to make the right decision, and I will always steer him in the right direction, encouraging him to ask questions and do his research first, then come to a conclusion. We have shared custody, but I make the medical decisions. I tried taking full custody, but unfortunately, I lost the case. The abuse is documented. I lifted the restraining order 2 years after we divorced. We used to do pickups and drop-offs at the police station, and after 2 years, I had to take the next step in trusting that the past was just that. I did not want my son asking me why he gets dropped off in a police station parking lot. I did see a therapist, mostly for the way the religion had a hold on me. I was also suffering from postpartum depression, so a whole lot of things were discussed. I don't think I was ever able to fully recover. It was so bad that my mind physiologically blocked my memories of those years, which is something my therapist warned me about. Although it's good that I don't recall certain things, it also makes me vulnerable, just like it did in this situation. Certain things definitely trigger it, like specific songs or going back to that town. I should also mention that my son's father was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I would not be shocked if there is a camera in my apartment. I am gathering all the advice from this thread and will have to tactfully make a plan to search for it without making it obvious. Commenter. I'm a former JW2. Do you think it's possible that he's trying to figure out if you're sleeping with your boyfriend, so that your ex would then be biblically free to remarry? Ops response. We are already divorced. The elders told him not to sign it because that would mean he can't remarry. I took it to court, and after showing all my police reports and pictures of abuse, they granted the divorce. I do see your point. On his end, he is not free to remarry. This could be why he is doing this. However, he is out of luck because I do not have my boyfriend stay over. I always go to his place when my child is with his father, especially now that he lives so close. It's weird. Update 1 month later. I have been lurking in the sub for the past week, and I am so happy I found this. I really wish I had known about this years ago when I left the congregation. It would have made the pain less and the loneliness not as bad. When I left the organization, I had no friends and no encouragement, and I almost convinced myself multiple times to go back, but I was able to get through it. I wanted to share my story with you, but first, I'll give a little background on my past. I pretty much grew up as a witness and never got baptized. I met my son's father when I was about 18, and I ended up pregnant a couple of months after that. The elders pretty much forced marriage on me. As soon as we moved in together, he was abusive. It was horrible. He would physically abuse me, knowing I was pregnant with his son. It got so bad that I would literally urinate on myself because of how scared I was of him. The last time he laid his hands on me was when I was 6.5 months pregnant. I remember he barged into the bathroom since he knew I was calling the cops, and when he opened the door, he hit my belly, and I went straight into the tub. They had to perform an emergency C-section. While I was under anesthesia, he even signed a paper stating that I would refuse a blood transfusion, and since he was my husband, it was his decision to make. Thankfully, I had great doctors, and my son and I were healthy and made it through. I remember the elders coming to visit me while I was still in the hospital. I remember them telling me that I needed to work harder at putting Jehovah first in our marriage because, without him, our marriage would fail. A few months later, I left him and left the organization. I went to therapy for my postpartum depression, and I was able to psychologically block those memories, although sometimes certain things trigger them, and it all comes back. It's insane how the mind works. I have a great relationship with my parents. They never shunned me, and they always looked after my son and me. I know they are brainwashed, but I know deep down my father realizes I made the right decision. After all this mess, I think he's starting to open his eyes a little. The link below is my first post, and below that, I copied and pasted my update. I don't know why they locked my post. I was at work, and when I checked, it was automatically locked. I did receive some good advice on there, but it's different when it comes from people who know what you grew up in and understand just how much mind control plays a big role in everything when it comes to JW. I would also like some advice on how to handle these elders. They keep calling my parents and begging them to reason with me. I assume this is going to reflect poorly on them, and we all know how much they hate that. Also, please keep in mind that my parents, although witnesses, have my best interests at heart. My father sat me down and told me that no matter what, he will stand by my decision and fully support me in going through with these charges. I just wish they didn't have to deal with all this harassment. Update. First and foremost, thank you for all your suggestions and messages regarding the steps I should take. So much has happened over the past 7 days, I will try to explain without making this too long. I'll start with last week, Wednesday. After reading all the comments, I decided to purchase a spy finder from Amazon. I figured it would put my mind at ease and finally allow me to feel comfortable in my own home. I paid for 2-day delivery and planned out how I would use it without being obvious. Since I knew the only way to do this was with my son's father in front of me, I decided to tell him I needed to discuss a new schedule I wanted to follow. Friday, we decided to meet up for ice cream with our son. I gave my boyfriend a spare key so he could go inside and see if the spy detector worked. Our meeting lasted about 40 minutes until I finally got the okay from my boyfriend, and I wrapped up the conversation. When I got into my car, I called my boyfriend, and he told me I needed to drop my son off at my mom's and head over to my place. I did exactly as he said. When I arrived at my place, I parked, and my boyfriend came inside my car and broke the news to me. He told me that the detector had detected something, but it was not clear. It kept showing red in my son's room around the doorknob, but it also showed red on one side of a wall that didn't have anything hanging near it. At this point, I didn't know what to do or say. Maybe it was just a malfunction, or maybe there was something there. I decided I needed to call the cops. I wasn't sure if it was the right call, but since the signal was showing in my son's room, that was enough for me to make the call, even if I sounded silly to the cops. Once the cops showed up, I explained the situation to one of them. He usually works the morning shift surveillance at my son's school, so I see him every morning. He was very understanding and told me he was calling in a tech who had the necessary equipment, as not all cops carry it. At this point, I still didn't tell the cops that I suspected my son's father. I figured I would mention it once it was confirmed. 10 minutes later, my son's dad walked up my driveway and asked if I was okay. I said yes, and that's when the cop approached. I think he saw how uncomfortable I was, and told him that only residents were allowed to be there. He told the cop that he was my son's father, and the cop started asking if he was from the area. As soon as he mentioned that he had recently moved 2 houses down, the cop asked him to leave since he was not a resident. Once he was off the property, the cop started asking me more questions about my son's father, and that's when I went into full detail. After our conversation, he told me there was a high chance that my ex could have placed a camera in my son's room. Once the tech arrived, he scanned the room, and we were told to wait outside. About 30 minutes later, he asked me to come in while my boyfriend stayed behind. He proceeded to tell me that there was indeed a camera in my son's room. They found a tiny camera hidden inside the doorknob. If you're not familiar, my doorknob's locked from the inside, but on the opposite side, there's a small hole where you usually need a flathead screwdriver or a similar key to unlock it. He explained that whoever installed the camera replaced the original doorknobs with 2 identical ones, meaning the door no longer had a lock. I never realized this. It was such a small detail that I had completely overlooked. I never locked my son's room, so it wasn't something I would have noticed. I broke down. I didn't know what to say or think. The tech told me the camera was linked through Bluetooth/Wi-Fi. Unfortunately, the signal was cut off, but he was working on getting some codes to determine where it had been transmitting from. Once they confirmed it, I was given an address, and of course, it traced back to my ex's home. Not the exact address, but rather coordination points. I have no idea what they refer to. They just told me it's a system they use to track signals. I was in complete shock. Part of me thought he would never do this. He would never violate my privacy and our son's privacy like this. I thought we were past this stage. After they broke the news, they told me I could press charges if I wanted to. If I decided to proceed, they would have to process a warrant for his arrest. It was the hardest decision I had to make, but I told them yes. They explained that the best thing for me to do was to stay at a relative's or friend's house until the situation was resolved, as it could be dangerous for me to remain so close to him. I didn't understand why they couldn't take him in then and there, but I agreed and packed a bag. I decided to stay at my parents' house. It was close to my job, and it was a place where my son felt comfortable. I did not hear from my ex at all on Saturday. I know I mentioned in my previous post that my parents and ex are Jehovah's Witnesses, which plays a big part in this whole story. Sunday night, my parents had plans, and I stayed behind with my son. I heard a knock on the door. I looked, and to my surprise, it was 2 elders. I guess you can call them pastors for those not familiar with the term. These were the same men who told me not to call the cops when my ex would get physical. They were also the same men who had watched me grow up since I was 3. I decided to open the door, and they asked to come in. Since my brother was in the other room, I felt a little more at ease speaking with them. As soon as they started taking the Bible out, I told them I did not feel comfortable with that and that if they had anything to say, it should be through a conversation and not through the Bible. They agreed and started explaining the consequences my ex is facing in the Kingdom Hall for what he has done. They also told me that my ex was taken down to the station Sunday morning but that he had confessed everything to them on Saturday. To make it short, they begged me to drop the charges and kept telling me to think about my son, to consider how he would feel knowing his dad is facing these charges. They kept saying over and over that Jehovah does not condemn his behavior and that sometimes the organization can work things out internally. I told them I would not drop the charges. What he did was violate my privacy, and while I was happy they would work it out within their religion, I would handle my end through the law. They proceeded to tell me that they have lawyers who can back up my ex and that if this is the route I choose, I should make sure I am covered as well. They also said the reason he put a camera in my son's room was because he wants custody, arguing that it's not fair for him to miss out on eternal life and that my ex could save my son. Crazy, yes, I know. I don't know what he was trying to find by putting a camera in my son's room, because I have absolutely nothing to hide, and my son is very well taken care of. I asked them to leave, and they did. When I told my dad what happened and what they had said to me, he called one of the elders and pretty much went off on him. I hope it doesn't ruin his reputation since I know this religion means the world to him, but at the same time, I also hope this might open his eyes. This is all such a nightmare for me. I don't know what to do. Deep down, I do not want to press charges because he is my son's father. I don't want this to ruin his record or for my son to grow up and find out I placed his dad in jail over this. I also know what it's like to be brainwashed and under mind control. On the other hand, I feel like he needs to learn his lesson. He needs to understand that you can't simply violate someone's privacy because of your religion. I'm not sure what will happen yet. Last I heard, he was out on bail and has a court date, which I will need to attend as well. At that time, I can decide whether to drop the charges if I want to. I also received a court date from family court, as he is seeking full custody. He filed about a month ago, so this is something he has been planning. I'm hoping this whole situation will work to my benefit, which is another reason why I shouldn't drop the charges. It could help me in family court. For now, that's all that has happened. I don't know what steps to take from here, and I'm just taking it day by day. I have found a new place, and after talking to my landlord, he is letting me break the lease. I hate that I have to move. I love my apartment, and now I'll be moving to a much smaller place for more money. I wish I didn't have to move, but there isn't much else I can do. Commenter. Do not drop any charges. My reasoning, besides all the religious BS, your ex is not rational and is already physically abusive. This is a bad combination. In my experience, he will never get better without therapy or medication, and most likely, issues will arise where he won't follow through with treatment even if he starts. What are the charges against your ex? Has the DA's office stopped any further investigation? Have you had an opportunity to speak with the investigators on your case? Have they hinted at any other concerns about him? Law enforcement can be very effective in uncovering things through intimidation. However, they will not want to be jerked around and expend effort if they sense you won't follow through. They may intimidate you a little to test your resolve. Hold fast to your decision. All the data he was gathering about you to possibly further his custody case has been made null and void and is inadmissible because it was obtained through a criminal act. It will not be allowed to be presented. His illegal actions will also be used against him. All of that goes away if you don't press charges. If you have not contacted a local agency concerning spousal abuse, regardless of your marital status, they will help you or direct you to assistance. They have experience in this and will guide you to the best course of action while also providing support. Regarding the elders who visited, regardless of what we think about the organization, that was in protocol. If you want that nonsense to stop immediately, contact or have someone contact a sharp elder from another congregation, etc., if that's what you want. These things that are happening to you are not unique to the organization. They happen everywhere, frequently. Because of that, there are many resources available. Please make use of them. I hope you remain safe and that everything works out for the best. Ops response. I actually went to the court today to file a restraining order, and they gave me a temporary one until the court date, where the judge will decide whether to make it permanent. I also went to the station to ask for more information about what was going on. They couldn't tell me much besides the fact that even if I drop the charges, the state is also pressing charges. Apparently, they take this matter very seriously since it happened in a child's room. They told me that someone would be in contact with me, but I should get a lawyer, as it's not recommended to handle this alone due to the many complexities I might not understand or that may require professional advice. I asked them what they did with the evidence, and they told me they have it and cannot release it to anyone since it is now in municipal custody. I am looking into lawyers and have scheduled a few consultations for tomorrow. My court date for custody is at the end of November, so I am hoping the other court date for the camera issue is scheduled before that, so I can have more evidence to prove that he is not suitable for custody. However, I feel that just having those charges pending and him being out on bail should be enough for the judge to grant me full custody, which I am now seeking. We currently have shared custody, but after this, I want full custody. Commenter. This sounds like really strange behavior from the elders, almost like they have a vested interest in having the charges dropped. Now why might that be? If your ex is going for full custody, he would have sought the assistance of the elders. Maybe the elders suggested he put in a spy camera, or maybe they knew someone who had expertise in this. If the charges aren't dropped, the facts might come out. I don't know if you are aware, but the organization has a printed guide for JWs involved in custody cases. If the elders are calling your parents, get them to ask the elders whether your ex had specifically admitted to breaking in and installing the spy cam, and if it was anyone else involved. When the elders told you that he would be dealt with in the congregation, did they spell out what they would do? Do not drop any charges, especially for the sake of your son. Ops response. One of the elders is actually my ex's uncle, which makes it a conflict of interest. Although he was part of the committee when I was pregnant and they took away the privileges I had as an unbaptized publisher, if that's the term. Sorry, I went to a Spanish hall and do not know some of the English terms. It seems so weird to me just how much they are pushing and harassing my family. It's almost as if something else is happening that they are afraid of. They told me that they are still going through their process, but that this could lead to him being reprimanded. What's the term for when you're not shunned but are pointed out as bad association? Is it censured? Not sure, but he won't get shunned, just a slap on the wrist.